conference that President Bush gave in the White House. According to the latest polling, as Candy referred to, only about 1 in 4 Americans believe that George W. Bush has done a good job as president. A new report in the Washington Post concluding he's presided over the worst 8-year economic stretch since Harry Truman. And, of course, there's Katrina and Iraq and 9/11 and torture and a lot of things to answer for, talk about. And today he tried. The raw politics from Ed Henry.
Thank you.
It was a George W. Bush we rarely see. The president who hates navel-gazing suddenly did just that.
I believe the phrase burdens of the office is overstated. Yeah, it's kind of like, why me? Oh, the burdens, what? Why did the financial collapse have to happen on my watch? It's just pathetic, isn't it? Self-pity.
But amid the new candor, flashes of the old cowboy as he defended his war on terror.
In terms of the decisions that I have made to protect the homeland, I wouldn't worry about popularity. What I would worry about is the Constitution of the United States and putting plans in place that makes it easier to find out what the enemy is thinking. Because all these debates will matter not if there's another attack on the homeland.
Pressed about his mistakes, he conceded some regrets.
Clearly, putting a mission accomplished on an aircraft carrier was a mistake. It sent the wrong message. We were trying to say something differently, but nevertheless, it conveyed a different message. Obviously, some of my rhetoric has been a mistake. I thought long and hard about Katrina. Could I have done something differently?
He blasted criticism that he was insensitive when he flew right over Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina, saying that landing Air Force One would have diverted critical resources.
Law enforcement would have been pulled away from the mission.
And he insisted the federal government saved many lives.
Don't tell me the federal response was slow when there was 30,000 people pulled off roofs right after the storm passed. I remember going to see those helicopter drivers, Coast Guard drivers, to thank them for their courageous efforts to rescue people off roofs. 30,000 people were pulled off roofs right after the storm moved through. It's a pretty quick response.
As he heads out the door, the president, who has hated talking about his legacy, is now all about defending it. He's even asking the TV networks for time on Thursday night to deliver a farewell address to the nation. Starting next week, Mr. Bush is vowing to stay out of the spotlight, agreeing with Barack Obama's mantra that there's only one president at a time. Ed Henry, CNN, the White House.
Let us know what you think of President Bush and President-elect Obama's first move. Join the live chat that's happening now at ac360.com. Also, check.
I get out of here, I'm getting off the stage. I believe there ought to be, one person in the Klieg lights at a time. I've had my time in the Klieg lights.
In the Klieg lights and the heat. We want to show you more of the President's News Conference today. Let's bring in our senior political analyst, David Gergen, Errol Lewis, the New York Daily News, and political contributor, Ed Rollins. David, I just want to play viewers briefly a piece that we already showed them just about Katrina that I just find stunning what the president said today. Let's watch.
People said, but the federal response was slow. Don't tell me the federal response was slow when there was 30,000 people pulled off roofs right after the storm passed.
I mean, it's amazing to me the president who said he's been thinking a lot about Katrina and up late at night thinking about it over the years still believes that there wasn't a problem with the federal response. There was a bipartisan congressional report in 2006 that said there were failures of leadership.
That is the most stunning thing, I think, that happened in the press conference, Anderson. It was, it was sort of good job, Brownie. We're back to that. You were there. You know how long people had to wait, and that his own agency didn't even know people were there for 48 hours. Didn't know they were at that convention center in those terrible conditions. And so there was a lot about this press conference that was surprising, but that was the most surprising of all. I also think, Anderson, just more broadly, I said on the air the other night here on this program that I thought maybe that people would have some sense of warmth about George Bush as he leaves office, as we traditionally do about departing presidents. I think I was wrong. The responses on your website and elsewhere are very hostile. I must say now, and revising my thinking about this, I don't think we've had a time since Richard Nixon left office, and Ed Rollins will remember that, a quarter of a century ago, when people were so relieved to see the end of a presidency and to welcome in a new president.
And Ed, you were saying before the break that This is a president who has been told now for a while, or kind of telling himself, history will judge me differently.
This is a president who thought he was going to be historic. He thought he was going to do better than his father. He wasn't going to make the mistakes of his father. He was going to be more like Reagan. And he has failed as miserably as any president in modern times, certainly. And I think that, as David just said, that there's no good feelings. Even Republicans, please leave the stage and go home. You know, let us try and rebuild our resources. The idea that you can stand in a press conference when the American public watched a major urban city collapse, crumble, people displaced, and be ashamed of it and say, we did everything we could. I didn't land the helicopter because it would have taken police away. It was just an absurd
Right,
statement.
I mean, Errol, I mean, it's sort of a red herring to talk about the flyover. That was a minor point. Yes, a PR disaster, and yes, it would have, you know, taken away police officers from more important things. But to focus on what the Coast Guard did, which was valiant and courageous and brilliant,
sure.
and totally forget about, you know, saying Brownie did a heck of a job on Friday, days after the storm had passed, and not even remembering people in the convention center. It just boggles the mind.
Well, I mean, and then there's the run-up to it. The fact that the Army Corps of Engineers, I mean, they'd been warned for decades that this Mississippi River Gulf outlet, the Mr. Go, would funnel in the event of a storm into the inner harbor and top the levees and flood it. It's exactly what happened. And then there's the post response. I mean, put aside what happened with 30,000 people saved. Okay, fine, give them all medals, but the city's still not rebuilt.
Right, and it wasn't. That's actually an inaccurate number for New Orleans anyway, but which is a minor detail. But but the response since, I mean, New Orleans is still in some parts on its knees.
Yeah, I mean, you had Brownie in charge of FEMA, but then he put his top political operative, Karl Rove, who was equally unqualified to rebuild a major American city, which he sort of approached half-heartedly before departing. And right now we still have thousands who are displaced and a city still unbuilt.
David, Bush said today that the greatest challenge that Obama faces is an attack on our homeland. And it was interesting, earlier, Vice President Cheney that advised Obama to look hard at the Bush counterterrorism policies before he implements what Cheney referred to as his campaign rhetoric and gets rid of those. I just want to show how Obama responded to Cheney's advice.
Well, I think that was pretty good advice, which is I should know what's going on before we make judgments, and that we shouldn't be making judgments on the basis of incomplete information or campaign rhetoric. So I've got no quibble with that particular quote. I think if Vice President Cheney were here, he and I would have some significant disagreements on some things that we know happened.
David, you've been in the White House. Is that a sensible way to look at it, or did that surprise you at all? I mean, I think there's some people, certainly on the left, who will be surprised at Barack Obama saying that not to follow through on just the campaign rhetoric.
Oh, I think that both Barack Obama and George W. Bush are going out of their way to be gracious toward each other and to say, respectful things of each other. I don't read too much into it more than that, and I definitely don't think that anybody ought to assume that that Barack Obama is going to take plays out of Dick Cheney's playbook. What I do think is sensible is for him now to have a chance to talk to the CIA and the FBI and to others and to the counterterrorism folks about just how, he hasn't had access to some of this information. I do think he needs to take a hard look once he gets in there. But let's be very clear. Underneath this comedy, this period of good feelings between the two, there are going to be sharp departures under the Obama administration from what the Bush administration was doing, starting with, as Candy Crowley was reporting earlier, the shutting down of Guantanamo. They're not going to sit around for a second. They're going to go do that next week, by all accounts.
Right. We learned today it may happen. Executive order may be issued within the first week. How important, Errol, do you think that is for Democrats, for the country?
Oh, well, there's an entire range of Barack Obama supporters for whom this is the main issue, to change the policy on torture, on warrantless wiretaps, closing down Guantanamo, getting to the bottom of Abu Ghraib, pushing forward on some of those investigations. He made those promises. People remember them. I hear from them every day on my radio show. They want to know that this is that this human rights agenda, if you want to call it that, was something that was real. It really does matter quite a lot to some people.
How much do you think, Ed, this is just sort of feel-good politics at this point? I mean, Bill Clinton talked about reversing Don't Ask, Don't Tell when he ran for office. Barack Obama has said the same thing. They essentially have said they are going to reverse Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Is this real, or are these things that then get kind of whittled away as politics?
I don't think some of these fundamental things can get whittled away. These are matters of high principle. Americans don't want torture. There may be CIA guys who feel they need to get these certain information, And I think in fairness to Barack Obama or any man who's president, they're going to do everything to make sure we never have a 9/11 attack again. But that doesn't mean by adopting that strategy that you have to adopt the same tactics this administration had. Obviously, he'll learn more in the next coming weeks, but he has a political base that he ran against a war. He was going to get his troops out of Iraq. He may not. He's now talking about 30,000 more troops in Afghanistan, which may mean 2 or 3 years from now we still have troops there, and that's going to create very significant.
How tough do you think Republicans are going to be toward him, especially early on?
I think Republicans are going to try and become an opposition party, which is a real task for them because they've been part of a governing process as long as David and I have. And in order to do that, they have to have a very controlled message. They're not ready to do that yet.
We're going to have to leave there. Earl Lewis, Ed Rollins, David Gergen, thank you very much, gentlemen. Breaking news is next. We're going to go